Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Molero.
And we are
the FAIRtax Guys.
Again, excited to be here at Big Daddy Studios in Gainesville, Florida. We are recording live with, on Spreaker. This actually is going to be a recorded version that will come out on Spreaker. And we're still going to be everywhere that we always have been.
Yeah.
We're now powered by Excluded, XCLUDED.com is the driving force behind the new video version of FAIRtax Power Radio. And we figured around whether we wanted to change the name of the program, and I didn't think so. I think we'll just keep calling it FAIRtax Power Radio, even though we are on a visual medium now that you can share with your friends on Facebook. We appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And let's see, the last episode, we were reintroducing the FAIRtax using what we call the sizzle points. And there's a history behind that name, which I'm not going to go into. But Bob was doing his Jeff Foxworthy imitation. And we also noted that, there's a lot of changes. I mean, we talked about the fact that even though Congress and the president told us that the tax plan that they passed in December was the greatest tax reform in a generation, it's not really reform, it's relief. And it has helped the economy. Not going to take that away from anybody. It has helped the economy. Anytime you drop the tax rates and make it a little simpler, but we still have an income tax, which means it still taxes you on your hard work and productivity.
You still have to fill out a tax return.
Yeah.
You still have withholding from your paycheck. You still have an IRS that can swoop in, violate the fire out of the Bill of Rights, as they continue to do. They can take your house. They can take your bank account just on the suspicion that you might have done something wrong.
Yep. And we still have a huge evasion problem, which we talked about in the last episode. Okay. And people in Congress just seem to be ignoring it, like hoping if they don't recognize it, it'll go away. It's only going to get worse. It's probably about $700 billion this year. $700 billion that's not being collected from people that should be collected because they're illegally evading it. And the study that was finished last year projects that in the next 10 years, by 2026, it'll be over $1 trillion unless Congress does something. Okay, we need to make Congress do something about it.
Yes, we do. They work for us. Remember that, folks. They work for us, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And for those of us of you watching on the visual medium here of FAIRtax Power Radio, we need to introduce this.
The income tax.
This is a 9x9. Just hold this up to the microphone so the radio people can see it. This is a 9x9 Rubik's Cube, and it is all scrambled up, and that is the income tax. I have an 8x8 Rubik's Cube here, which is the flat tax. It's not scrambled quite as bad, but it can get to be just as big a mutt mess as the big one. And our little 2x2 cube here is the FAIRtax.
Yep.
Decide which one you would rather deal with.
Yeah, I mean, the FAIRtax.
Yes.
So simple, a child could understand it. Just like that. That's meant for a child. Okay.
It is. Okay.
Yeah, it really is.
Getting back to what the FAIRtax is all about, there are so many people out there who do not understand what the FAIRtax is. They have heard political propaganda against it. They have heard, misinformation against it, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about the FAIRtax that people that don't want to see it happen will tell you. And a lot of that is driven by Congress critters and lobbyists, I'll tell you that for sure. But some of the truth about the FAIRtax is, and you will get the truth here on FAIRtax Power Radio about the FAIRtax, is that if you'd like to put more money in your pocket, get rid of federal withholding, get rid of the federal payroll taxes. We talked about this on the last episode.
Yep.
The FAIRtax will do that. You can bring home a whole lot bigger chunk of what you actually earn because the government will no longer be skimming its little piece right off the top like they used to do, Al Capone used to do in the 20s.
That's right. And if you like the idea of feeding your family before feeding the government, because that's what withholding does. It puts the government as a higher priority than your family. You have to deduct the income tax and the payroll tax, and your employer sends it to the federal government before you are allowed to take your money home and provide for your family. Not with the FAIRtax, all right? The FAIRtax gets rid of the income tax, which means it gets rid of withholding and payroll taxes, and you get your whole paycheck. Now, if there's insurance or state income tax or something, that will continue. But as far as federal withholding, gone. because we get rid of the income tax and we go with the sales tax.
And I don't know anybody of any political ideology or party affiliation that would not like to have more money in their paycheck.
Absolutely.
I mean, that just doesn't make sense that anyone would oppose having more money in your paycheck.
Yeah.
Which is what the fair tax will do for you.
Yeah.
But let's get on down the line a little bit. Now, we talked about this earlier. The IRS. Mike Huckabee has aptly described the IRS as a criminal enterprise that routinely violates the Bill of Rights. And if you've listened to our FAIRtax Power Radio podcast before, we have gone through in great detail some of the abuses that the IRS foists on people.
Yeah.
Civil asset forfeiture being the biggest one. They can just come in and take your paycheck. They can garnish your wages. They can freeze your bank account. And
not even accuse you of anything.
Yeah, not really. You don't have to be convicted of any wrongdoing. You don't even have to be charged with any wrongdoing. If some bureaucrat at the IRS thinks you may be doing something wrong, they have the power to come in and grab your bank account. And so that is a thing that needs to go away.
Yeah.
The IRS needs to be thrown on the scrap heap of history.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to get rid of the income tax that the IRS is charged with administering and enforcing, and pass the fair tax. So if you'd like to see the IRS disappear from the face of the earth forever,
you might be a fair tax fan.
Oh, I tell you what, it still makes my blood boil when I think what the IRS does. And there is no greater unfairness than having to defend yourself when your accuser is also the judge and the jury to decide who wins.
Yeah, and occasionally there'll be IRS cases and somebody will have the wherewithal to take the IRS to court, okay? And the court may decide in favor of the plaintiff instead of the IRS, okay? That's fine. But who pays the legal fees for the IRS?
You do.
We do, yeah. We do. I mean,
you do.
What a gig, all right? They mess up your life because they inadvertently think you're doing something wrong when you're not, okay? They can freeze your bank account. We'll talk about the civil asset forfeiture in more detail in another episode, but it is possible. The Bill of Rights goes out the window, all right? There's no presumption of innocence. There's no due process. There's no protection against unreasonable search and seizure. All that stuff is gone with as far as the IRS is concerned. And, they just terrorize people.
Yeah, well, I heard one of the political critters a while back say, we're going to reform the IRS. We're going to change it into a customer-friendly entity so that it will no longer be this ogre, and I don't believe that for an instant.
We've heard that several times in several years, and how's that working for the country, huh?
Not going to work.
No, not
and
really.
I've heard another one say, well, we'll get rid of the IRS, but at the same time, we'll just rename it and have something else that does the same thing. So that doesn't really solve the problem either.
Yeah.
If you want the federal enforcement of a federal income tax to go away, you must support the fair tax. That's the only way to make it happen.
Yep. So go on to the next one here.
All right, folks. If you like the idea of keeping the government's nose out of your personal financial business, you might be a fair tax fan. It is obscene, Ron, the amount of personal financial information that you have to share with the government on this nice little document called an income tax return.
Yeah, but the people at the government have only our best interests. I mean, they would never abuse that information, would they?
I have got an oceanfront cottage in Kansas City. I will sell you if you believe that, buddy. There ain't no way that happens. But, you have to tell the government more than you're comfortable telling your own kids about your finances.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Even like if you have employee business expenses, you travel and you have travel expenses, you use a car in your job or something, or a truck or whatever, your own personal vehicle, and you submit employee business expenses. Well, for that car, they want to know of course they want to know how many miles you put on for business, but then they also want to know how many miles you use that car for personal use. What business is it of theirs?
Yeah,
right?
I think Thomas Jefferson would be appalled if he knew that the government wanted to know, and you were required by law to tell the government how much money you make, where you make it, how many kids you've got, how much medical expenses you paid, how much you gave to your church, on and on and on and on. The stuff that the government requests and requires on an income tax return is just a horrible invasion of your personal financial privacy. That goes away with the fair tax. So again, if you'd like to keep the government's nose out of your personal financial business, you might be a FAIRtax fan. Oh, that's insane.
Yeah. Yep. And it's a serious problem. Unfortunately, Americans, they're very tolerant, and they've gotten used to this abuse, okay? We need to get less tolerant and demand more privacy, all right, from our government, and a tax plan that allows us to be private, because the fair tax is anonymous. You go to the store, you buy something, all right, the clerk says, okay, that'll be such, $100.34 or whatever and so forth. You give them a credit card, you pay them cash, whatever. That's it. You're done. All right. You've done your due diligence. All right. And it doesn't nobody needs to know what it was or what you bought or why you bought it. All right, or if it's for personal use or business use. It's a anonymous transaction. That's the way it should be, not this crazy income tax return stuff where you have to give away all kinds of information that should remain private and within your family.
Yes, the IRS goes away means withholding goes away and tax returns go away. And again, that should cross all political affiliations, all ideologies. I don't know anybody of any political affiliation or ideology that enjoys spending hours upon hours upon hours. And we've got fairly simple tax returns.
Yeah,
but by the time we go through all the software and it asks us all the questions, it takes us a couple hours to prepare a tax return. And you spend time answering all the questions that the software asks you. And then it pops up, congratulations, you qualify for the standard deduction.
Yeah. After.
So filling out an income tax return is of course, only have to do it once a year, but it's still a major hassle that we shouldn't have to put up with. We should not have to disclose all our personal finances to the government, and the fair tax makes that go away.
And it costs us money because, it's a hassle for us. I mean, Bob and I are retired. Our tax returns are very simple. You get into a business and you have to do a business tax return. First off, if it's any kind of business, you're probably going to have a CPA, tax attorney, somebody helping you out with that stuff. I know we did. My wife and I had a small business, and I kept the books on QuickBooks, and then at the end of the year, I gave it to my accountant. He went through it, corrected my mistakes and so forth, which occasionally would happen, and then he would, do the tax stuff. Okay, so we had to pay him,
and all that cost gets rolled on to your customers.
Yeah, exactly. And even in years which we didn't make a profit, I still had to pay the accountant to do that because we had to have the taxes done properly and so forth. So so that expense. I mean, when you think about businesses. We had a very simple business. We were the only two people in it, okay? You get other businesses that have employees. Well, they got payroll taxes. They got this, that, and so forth. It gets more complex. The complexity costs the business money, which gets rolled into the cost of their product or service. So the consumer ends up paying for it anyways. Don't fall for this. We're going to get into that later, but don't fall for this nonsense that the corporations need to pay their fair share.
Oh.
You pay it.
Yep, you pay it. They have to write the check. I mean, it's just like buying materials for, a shed or a car. When you buy a car, you are paying for the steel and the glass and the rubber and the plastic and all the stuff that goes into it.
And the time and labor to put all those things together to make an actual product out of it.
People understand that, but they don't seem to understand, well, you're also included in the price of that car is the tax liability that the government puts on them and what they have to spend to comply with the tax code. But let's move on a little bit here.
Sure.
How many folks like getting? Would you like, let me ask you a question. Look right in your eye here and ask you a question. Would you like to get a government check every month or a direct deposit, whether it's a paper check or a direct deposit? Would you like to get money from the government every month? And how many people are going to turn that down?
Well, another way to put it, how would you like a tax system that pays you?
Yeah, there we go. So if you'd like to receive a prebate check every month that covers the cost of taxes on the basic necessities you got to buy for your family, you might be a FAIRtax fan. We could spend the rest of this episode, and probably will, talking about the prebate.
Yeah.
Now, the prebate is you probably won't find that word in your Funkin' Wagnalls. It's
our little prebate card.
Oh, okay. I'll work on that too.
Yeah.
The prebate is a rebate given in advance. A prebate is what they call, and they will know how much your federal poverty level is. The government figures this out on every year, how much it costs a family of 2, a family of 3, a family of 4, and goes on up the scale, how much it costs to provide for the basic necessities of your family, which of course varies by your household size.
Yeah, strictly by the size of your household. That's it. Has nothing to do with your income.
So hold this up to the microphone again, so our radio folks can see this. If the fair tax were the law today in 2018, what would happen? The federal poverty level for a 4-person household, 2 adults and 2 children, the federal poverty level is $32,920. That is what the government figures it's going to cost you for basic necessities, food, shelter, clothing, stuff like that, basic transportation. That is not, cruises to the Caribbean. That is not a private jet. That is what it will cost a family of 4, $32,920 to basically feed and clothe a family of that size. So what you say, the fair tax is 23% of their spending. For every $100 you spend, $23 of it is fair tax. We don't want to get too far in the weeds here.
Yeah.
But you can figure out if you spent $32,920, you would pay $7,572 worth of fair tax.
For the whole year.
For the whole year. Now, what they're going to do under the fair tax, again, we've mentioned this before, you do not owe a dime of federal tax until you have met your family's basic needs. Until you have spent $32,920, which is the assumption is going to be that's what it takes to provide for your family's basic needs, a family of 4. Once you have spent that, once you have gone over that amount, then you're kind of doing discretionary stuff.
Yeah.
But $32,920, you would pay $7,572 in fair tax, and you will pay that at the register because it will be included in the price of everything you buy.
Yep.
But this prebate, you can think about it as a tax refund. Is it giving you back money that was collected from you that you do not owe, and you get that back on a monthly basis? A family of 4, if the fair tax were the law today, would receive a monthly prebate check of $631. Now, that might not mean much to Donald Trump, or somebody that has a bank account similar in size to his.
Sure.
But if you're on minimum wage, you got a couple of families working on minimum wage, trying to support 2 kids on minimum wage jobs, another $631 a month would be an amazing godsend.
The important concept here is that, some people will say, wait a minute, the fair tax is a sales tax. Oh, that's regressive. It hurts the poor. Okay, that's the first thing the Americans for Fair Taxation considered. All right, they know that a normal sales tax is regressive, and it would hurt the poor, those people that can least afford it. So they came up with this mechanism to wipe that off the slate. Okay,
yeah.
The prebate means that they're going to be untaxed for the basic necessities up to the poverty level.
Yeah, you don't owe taxes on the spending up to the poverty level because that's what they figure is providing the basic necessities of family. It would be a logistical nightmare to try to figure out how much everybody spends and then charge or not charge the tax based on whether or not you've met that threshold. So for the sake of simplicity, and it's just to make it logistically possible, excuse me again, the fair tax will be collected from $1 on every retail purchase you make of new goods and services. This is another thing we can get into later.
Yeah.
Used goods are not taxed under the fair tax.
Right.
But all retail purchases of new goods and services will be subject to the fair tax. So if you're one of these families of 4 that's barely getting by, supporting 2 kids on a minimum wage job, you're probably buying used when you can.
Yeah, that's
under
right.
the fair tax, no tax on that.
Yeah.
So if you're buying used under the current system, you are paying embedded taxes because what you pay for those used goods is income to the person that's selling it to you. That's taxed by the IRS. So the fair tax works a lot better for the low income people than it does. But really, you know what your spending up to the poverty level is going to be. You know how much fair tax you're going to pay on that amount of spending. You get that back. So you do not take a dime out of your pocket to pay federal taxes until your spending rises above the poverty level. Your family is a higher priority than the government. And if you're on the low end of the scale, you do not get taxed at all because you get back in this prebate what you will pay at the cash register. Elegantly simple, amazingly fair.
Yeah. Now let's take a look at the fair tax, what we know about the fair tax in this family of four. This family of four, mom and dad and two kids. They're just getting by. They're earning just enough to put food on the table, provide shelter, clothes on their back, and so forth. Under the fair tax, yes, they will pay the fair tax when they go to the store and pay for services. But the prebate, the reason they call it the prebate is they're going to take the family of four and the poverty levels established by Health and Human Services, and they're going to rebate that same amount in monthly increments at the beginning of the month. So at the beginning of the month, they're going to get this prebate. They will end up spending it because they're going to be buying stuff for their family, food, clothing, and shelter. And they'll be paying the prebate on it, but they're going to get it back before they actually spend it. So they are untaxed up to the poverty level. Now, as Bob said,
the fair tax is a tax that pays itself.
Yeah,
up to a point.
And if they get a raise, if somebody gets a raise, and they start earning a lot more, and then it's up to them. They can spend it all, and of course, the prebate does not change with income. The prebate is only dependent on the number of people in the household.
Now,
That's it.
You would register with the Social Security Administration
Yeah.
is going to actually be the vehicle by which this prebate is distributed. So you would tell the Social Security Administration who's in your household, give them the Social Security number so the same number can't be used multiple times.
That's right.
But the Social Security Administration is already in the business of distributing money like that. So that's the vehicle through which the prebate would be given. And you could, most likely it would be a direct deposit.
Yeah,
into your bank account.
Would be safe. So this family of four, they get this prebate at the beginning of the month. All right, they're protected against paying taxes on the basic necessities. But like I said, let's say they get a raise and they start earning a bunch more money. Okay, they got a decision. Do they want to spend that money? They want to put it in savings. Maybe they're renting, paying rent for an apartment. They want to get their own house. Okay, well, with the fair tax, they'll have the decision of saving that extra money or go ahead and spend it. Maybe, they've been living on a shoestring for so long, they want to go out and buy a nice TV or something like that. Anyways, whatever happens is their decision. The government is out of it, all right? It's fair. It's very simple. And it really helps the people that most need it, the working poor.
Now, of course, you'll be able to adjust if your household size changes, if you have a child, if you adopt a child, or if you have one that leaves the nest and is now making her own or his own, whatever, then you can adjust the size of your household, and your prebate would be affected. But then again, the prebate, get this through your head now, the prebate is not affected by how much money you make. It is affected strictly by your household size. What is the poverty level for your household size? And a friend of mine has got like 4 kids. His prebate, 2 adults and 4 dependents, $797 a month.
Yeah. And of course, their basic necessities are a little more than
they would be buying more stuff, and paying more fair tax at the register.
So they
would get but we're not talking about chump change here. We're talking about real money that's going to be coming in. And again, if you're on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale, you're barely getting by. The fair tax is a godsend because even if you're not paying federal income tax, those people that are on the low end of the scale and are not paying federal income tax, if they're working, you are still paying the payroll tax that the fair tax will get rid of. You're still being taxed to support Social Security and Medicare. And those are the most regressive taxes on the book. Those are nasty.
So let's go back to this family of 4. What do we know? Under the fair tax, they get the prebate. They get their entire paycheck. And if they want to buy something used, let's say the car goes belly up and they have to buy another car, they don't have to buy a new car. They can buy a used car and legally avoid paying the fair tax, all right, because used stuff is not subject to the fair tax, all right. The fair tax really helps the people that need it most, as I said before, the working poor. It is the best thing for them and will be probably a better vehicle to help them lift themselves out of poverty and get into, more of a middle class, whatever you want to call it, lifestyle. So it's really good for the working poor. The prebate is the key to fairness for the fair tax. It is absolutely essential.
And don't let anybody tell you that it's going to be a government handout or it's an entitlement. No, it is a tax refund. Nobody tells you that the tax refund you get from the IRS now is an entitlement.
Yeah.
You're not getting any money out of the federal treasury. You are getting your money back. Money that was collected from you that you do not owe is giving back to you in this prebate. So don't buy the idea that this is an entitlement, and it's not going to be means tested. It's still nobody, regardless of how much money you make under the fair tax, pays taxes on the basic necessities of life, period. End of discussion. Everybody gets the prebate. Now, if you choose not to register for it, then I guess that's your business.
And
but it will be available, but that's what it is. It's a tax refund. It's not an entitlement. It is a tax refund, money collected from you that you don't owe. And the prebate is what really makes the fair tax sing. It's a wonderful idea. Whoever got that should get the Nobel Prize for economics.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
All
I'm
right.
not sure who we can credit that to, but that's very
time
important.
is getting away from us here. We've got about 4 minutes left in this episode. Let's hit one more thing. If you would like to be in control of how much federal tax you pay, you might be a FAIRtax fan. Right now, you don't have a choice. If you make X number of dollars, there's a table that your employer uses. The government is going to get their withholding before you get yours, and that's it. You are not in control of how much tax you pay, other than how big your salary is.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
again, that's not something most people have a direct control over. But with the fair tax, we mentioned if you buy used rather than buy new, you can decide whether you want to pay the tax or not. If you don't want to pay it, buy a used car.
Yeah.
Buy a house that's previously existing. Don't build a new one.
You live on a little plot of land and you grow your own vegetables. I mean, there are people that do this. They grow a lot of their own stuff. That cuts down what they have to buy at the store. That's perfectly fine under the fair tax. The less you spend at the store, the less fair tax. And that's legal. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. All right? That's not going to be the way for most Americans, because not too many of us grow our own vegetables anymore.
No, here in Florida, the bugs get them all. Yeah, Randy put up a picture of some apples he'd been working on. The ants got it was not a pretty sight.
Yeah,
but anyway, you are in control, or more so in control of how much federal tax you pay with the fair tax than you will be with the income tax. We've got about 2.5 minutes left. We need to encourage people to go to PopVox and tell Congress critters to support the fair tax. H.R. 25 in the House, S-18 in the Senate. That's for this current Congress. Now, the House bill number has always been the same. Fair tax has been around since 1999, folks, almost 20 years. And it's been H.R. 25 in the House every year. The Senate bill number has changed from year to year on occasions. Yeah. But this year it's H.R. 25 and S-18. So if you can go to PopVox, P-O-P-V-O-X, register yourself there, tell them what your address is so they know what congressional district you're in. And you can comment on the fair tax. You can comment on any proposal that's up there.
Yep.
So we encourage people to go up there and say nice things about the fair tax and tell them what's wrong with the other tax plans that keep the IRS, that keep the income tax, that keep all the problems we've got now.
What's wrong with the other plans? They're not the fair tax. That's what it is.
You got that right.
So PopVox. Our email address, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. Please email us. We get some great comments, suggestions on subjects for for future Fair Tax Power Radio. It's great. We've come up with, that's how we discovered Jade Wally, our CPA friend in Colorado.
And real quickly, if you'd like to help support Americans for Fair Taxation, unfortunately, it takes money to do this. And we're not just trying to solicit your money, but we do need some help. If you would like to help the Americans for Fair Taxation, the grassroots level behind the fair tax, go to Ebates. A lot of people go to these Ebates. You get a little rebate if you do online shopping. You go through Ebates first, and then you launch out to your other online shopping place. When you do that, you can direct your Ebate refund to another place. You can do that with Americans for Fair Taxation. We appreciate folks that do that.
Yeah, because we don't have a rich sugar daddy that's supporting these folks. And remember, all of the people with the national organization and each state organization, volunteers. Nobody gets paid. There are no paid positions.
All right, that's it for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Ron Malero.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you again that the fair tax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
FAIRtax is coming to clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey!
Oh, these income tax forms are way too complicated. There's got to be a better way. Who are you?
we're the FAIRtax Guys.
We've got a big solution for you.
What's that?
It's the fair tax. Completely eliminates the federal income tax system as we know it. No more withholding, no more payroll taxes, no more tax returns ever, no more IRS. All gone. And I guarantee you, once you understand it,
You'll demand it.
Yeah.